Raechel. Our guest today is Taylor Sleaford. He's an athlete, a coach, and an all-around great human being. So, without further ado, let's hang with Taylor. So welcome, Taylor. Thanks for joining me today, man.
Oh, hey, Raechel. Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to talk to him today and kind of dive into all the different things he's into. So when did CrossFit enter your life? Like, when did that become a thing for you?
Yeah, so it's funny. I would say my senior year of high school was like technically when I first started doing CrossFit, which was 2009. I didn't really know it was CrossFit. We had a good friend of mine who I grew up playing baseball with. He went to my school, but he was in college studying exercise science. And he's actually kind of what led me down the path of college strength and conditioning. Somebody I looked up to. He was 4 years older than me. His younger brother was the same age, so we were really close. And he started, while he was in school, he started training our baseball team, and we did these like CrossFit style workouts. And I didn't know what that was. And 2009, CrossFit wasn't really big. There weren't a lot of affiliates. And then so interesting for me in terms of playing sports is like I always loved practice. I love training. So I always think of that Allen Iverson quote that's like, we talking about practice? But for me, I loved it. And I love training, and I just love progress. Like there's something addicting about that.
Yeah.
And I think for me, especially a sport like baseball, where like even I remember my senior year of high school, I did really well. I batted almost 400, which still means that the majority of the time I was failing, right?
Yeah.
So baseball is an interesting sport like that, where even if you're batting 300, it's like you're still failing more than you're hitting, right? And so for me, I like practice because, you know, you miss a rep or you have a bad swing and you can get right back up there.
Yeah.
Whereas games, it's like, you know, maybe you get 3 at bats and, you know, that sort of thing. So, you know, fast forward to the end of high school and then getting into college, I started getting into more endurance sports. So I just, that love for training carried over. So, started running more, did some triathlons. When I got to college, we had a club triathlon team, and then there was also like a club cycling team. So got into endurance sports.
Nice.
I actually took a college class that was called Sport Physiology and Marathon, which was really cool, where our final exam was run the Nashville Marathon. And then so we had like a lab, which was running together. And then the lecture was learning about exercise physiology and sport nutrition, and then like history of the marathon. So that was a really cool experience. And then from there, you know, I've kind of just like loved everything. Like growing up playing baseball, I primarily was a catcher, and then I had these knee injuries and pretty much played every position. I even talked, I except for pitching, I didn't really pitch most of my life. And then I talked to my coach my senior year into letting me pitch. So it's kind of that jack of all trades, master of none. And so that's what made CrossFit attractive. So then my freshman or sophomore year of college, I joined a CrossFit gym, and that was my first exposure. And it was still pretty new. Most people coaching CrossFit had no idea what they were doing. Like that love for suffering. It was every gym was like in this dirty warehouse. Like, it was kind of like a sick and twisted, where you almost wanted to feel like you were going to throw up after every workout. And so, it kind of just combined everything. I liked lifting weights. I liked training, but I also liked the conditioning aspect. So got into that a little bit. Then that's when I was in college, as I started interning as a strength and conditioning intern in the weight room. And at the time it was really looked down upon. I remember one of the coaches I worked for, one of my mentors, gave me a really hard time for doing CrossFit. So I stopped because it wasn't cool, and stopped for about 3 years, and then graduated college. Long story short is I was having trouble finding a paid position as a college strength coach. Ended up moving out to Colorado. I went to school in South Carolina. And it just kind of made sense. The background I had a lot of background in Olympic weightlifting. I had some certifications in it. So it was just a natural progression to keep coaching, you know, barbell movements in the private setting. And so I actually started coaching CrossFit. I got hired by a gym to be their Olympic lifting coach, and we started a USAW weightlifting affiliate.
Yeah.
And then I just started coaching CrossFit, and that's kind of actually when I would say like 2013 is when I actually started training, and yeah, just kind of combined all the things that I like doing.
Right on. That's awesome. So let's kind of dive into like your experience that you had starting coaching from like that CrossFit when you worked at universities to what you're currently doing now. Kind of walk us through that process.
Sure. Yeah. So, growing up, I always loved sports. And when I got to college, I don't know. At first I had no idea what I wanted to do. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember being like 18 years old and like, how am I supposed to know? And I had friends who were like, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I'm like, how do you know this?
Yeah.
So I started having this passion for training and doing these triathlons and stuff. And so I was aware that like exercise science was a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was kind of like, oh, well, I don't want like my passion to also be my work, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I've always just loved helping people. And so I thought about majoring in psychology. And ultimately my friend that I had mentioned, he actually, as I started college, he graduated and got a job as a strength coach for a minor league baseball team in Florida.
Okay.
Which in Florida is where I grew up. And so I got on the phone with him, and I didn't even know strength and conditioning coach was a job up until that point. I was like, oh, this sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I'd been interested in like physical therapy or athletic training because of my injuries and returning to play. But ultimately, I didn't want to work with an injured population. I wanted to help people prevent basically what happened to me. I learned a lot of stuff where had I, had a better strength and conditioning program, I probably wouldn't have had the shoulder injuries that I had. So yeah, that's kind of what sold me on that. So my the second semester of my freshman year at college, I started interning in the weight room, and just fell in love with it. I loved working with athletes. I loved learning, everything that I was. And so that's when I was just like, okay, I want to be a college strength coach. Like this is it. So while I was in college, I interned for 3 years at the College of Charleston, and it's a relatively smaller school. It's D1. Like mid-major school, but we don't have a football team. So it was actually good because I didn't know it at the time, but I got a lot more experience than I realized.
Yeah.
And then even as a junior and senior in college, I was given the responsibility of having my own team. So I programmed and led the strength and conditioning program for the cheer and dance team.
Okay.
So, I had a key to the weight room. I opened it up. I programmed. I worked with the sport coaches. I scheduled stuff. And so that was a great opportunity, learning, programming, leading a team. And it was an interesting dynamic. Some of these girls were older than I was. So it was like taking on that coaching role, but also being, in school with them.
Yeah.
And then, ultimately, I thought I knew more than I did in terms of the field, and just realizing like what it took. It's, you kind of you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so, I graduated and so I did that. I also did an internship at the University of South Alabama with their football team once the summer before my senior year. And ultimately that's what I wanted to do. And then realized that, it's just competitive. It's a lot about, right place, right time. Who do you know? And the network I had built, there weren't really openings at the right places. And, really, I needed to make some money. I needed to get a job. And the way the field is, I probably needed a master's degree. And so I was looking at taking a year off, and then had some friends move to Colorado. Always wanted to live here because I love the outdoors. And then, so that's when I got into CrossFit. When I first moved out here, I was working at a coffee shop, and minimum wage was just not doing it.
Yeah.
So started coaching CrossFit, and early on, I really loved that. I loved, working with people. It's interesting because working with athletes is like, even if they're not good at something, like they pick up on stuff pretty quickly, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, all of a sudden you go to CrossFit and there's people who have like never lifted weights their whole life, and you're trying to teach them these technical weightlifting movements. And so that was a lot of fun because I could make big changes in their life. And it was different stuff every day. And, So
that kind of, you had experience working in the CrossFit setting as a CrossFit coach. You got into that strength and conditioning thing, and then having that opportunity to actually like take charge of a whole team, like that's huge. Like you learn so much from being able to do that, especially at a smaller school where you get to kind of focus on that. So that's awesome. So now For those of you that don't know, Taylor owns his own online remote coaching business, Relevant Athletics. So you're doing that, and then you're also coaching as a CrossFit coach at CrossFit Omnia. So kind of let's walk through how you went from that college strength conditioning to jumping to do your own online remote coaching business.
Yeah. So the short version is I moved out to Colorado, after college, started coaching CrossFit, and I loved it. And then quickly you learn it's similar to like personal training where like the hours are tough. You work, even if you coach like 20 hours a week, it feels like 40 or 50 because you're coaching the same class. It's like performing, right? Everybody that shows up, it's like the best hour of their day, and you coach the same thing for 6 hours or 4 hours or whatever it is, and you're drained, but you got to show up, you got to be there. And it's like that the hours are weird, right? Like I might coach a 5 a.m. class, 6 a.m. and then my next class is 10 a.m. and then my next class is 1 p.m. and like it just a lot of kind of weird hours, and eventually it was just taking a toll. And I really just love coaching. I love working with people. And so the next evolution is, basically becoming a gym owner. That's where you could make some decent money. The hours are better. And I just saw the gym owner at the time, I really respected, but she was doing a lot more of business related things, not really coaching, not interacting. And I was like, I just don't want to do that. So ended up coaching CrossFit for about 4 or 5 years and was at a sticking point where I needed to make it a career. Coaching was a job, and I needed it to be a career and make money and financial security. And so ultimately looking around, trying a lot of different things, I just felt like the college strength and conditioning setting was the best format for that. Mm-hmm. So I decided to get back into college strength and conditioning. Took a position at Colorado State University with their football team. This was spring of 2018. That was just this 4-month position. After that, took another one at Clemson University. Really just, trying to build my way back in. And ultimately they were great opportunities and I love what I did. But I was really burned out, still broke. And it's just kind of a long process. It was still that, right place, right time. I needed to get a master's degree. You're moving around a lot based on the position and what's available. And it's crazy hours. Like you're really dictated by the students. So like, again, it was a similar theme of, I wasn't really actually coaching that much for the amount of time that I was like at work per se, right? Because the students' schedules are so condensed that you show up at 5 a.m. to set up for a 6 a.m. lift. So everything's ready. And then, the lift goes till 7 and then you spend an hour breaking down the equipment and whatever. And, I really respect those people and what they do. And I loved working with the athletes and building those relationships. But I just, I was working 7 days a week, crazy hours, and so ultimately just realized that, okay, this is not sustainable for me and my personality. So it ended up taking a desk job just to get back on my feet, sort of figure things out. And very, very quickly realized that desk life is not for me. Being a coach is who I am. It's part of my identity in one way or another, whether that's, I knew at that point I would always be a coach. I just didn't know what capacity. At that time, that's when I really realized, okay, maybe this online coaching thing is, the thing for me. It will provide flexibility, but also, I can make good money doing that and then do what I love. So I really spent most of 2018, most of 2019, while I was working my desk job, building up my online business. And most of my clients are within the functional fitness realm. So background in CrossFit and that sort of thing. Just, one thing at a time, getting more clients. And honestly, I love what I do. And, in today's world, people are so connected through social media and that form of communication that while it seems like it's harder to build a relationship than in person, I actually find that I talk with people daily. It may be not as in depth of a conversation. It's really been able to combine, my personal interests and goals of like living the life I want, going skiing, the mountains, and then also working with people and helping them. And yeah, so that's kind of where I started Relevant Athletics. And then, you know, the latest venture and progression is now doing more personal development work. I started Summit Collective with a friend of mine, Michael Leary. So we're co-founders, and he lives in Portland, Maine, and I'm here in Denver, Colorado. And basically, we just had similar mindsets, similar views on training. And really the progression of that is all of my clients now with Relevant, I do goal setting, I do mindset work, which really personally, I went through a lot of personal development work in order to start my own online business. And I found that really a lot of people are closer to their goals than they realize. They just, you know, when it comes to goal setting, I think a lot of people haven't done like formal goal setting, and they're just like, oh yeah, I kind of want this. And what I'm finding with my clients is they don't really know what they want, or they don't know why they want it. And once you do the deeper work of figuring out, okay, what do you want? Why do you want it? And ultimately it's about taking that identity on, right? So like if I have a client who wants to run a marathon for the first time, right? They need to take the identity of a marathon runner. And so we'll create a mantra that says, I am a runner. I am a marathon runner. And once you take on that identity and that's who you are, all of a sudden when you wake up, you're like, well, I'm a runner, so I'm not going to skip this workout. And I'm a runner, so I'm going to make these food decisions. And I'm a runner, so I'm going to get to bed early on time. And it was really this common theme of like, for me personally, I've been in the field for about 10 years, and the programming is the easy part, right? Like once I know what people want and, you know, the time they have and that sort of thing, you know, so that's really where, you know, Summit Collective kind of grew, is Michael and I had a lot in common. And now we have this course called the School of Life, and it's really helping people do that deep work to figure out what they want, why they want it, and be able to take on that identity so that they can achieve whatever it is they want.
So I think that's really cool. I saw that you guys were doing that, the Summit Collective, the School of Life course. So kind of let's dig into the whole mindset goal setting thing, and kind of tell me more about the process of like that course that you're offering now, the School of Life, that personal development aspect, and like what type of people you're working with, like what you want to achieve with it, and kind of the whole process that someone can go through when they're in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, basically even with, you know, my coaching and fitness and programming and that sort of thing, it's really a development of like things that I've been through. And even if I have clients who are at a high level, you know, like I've coached CrossFit Games athletes, I've coached a professional hockey player, and I've never been on that stage, but I've done that sort of training. And so this goal setting and mindset work is the same way. And it really started, you know, the catalyst was like when I was at Colorado State and when I was at Clemson, and I was just like, I pretty much reached this point where I honestly didn't believe that I could do what I love and make a living doing it. You know, people, there's that quote that's like, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on, get out of here. That's no, nobody likes working or whatever.
Right.
And then, you know, when I left Clemson and I started this desk job, I really did a lot of self-reflection and realized, okay, I need some help. And so I started, you know, I signed up for courses. The Strong Coach is a program that really had a lot of influence on me. Started reading, and just, you know, essentially getting my house in order, like doing the deep work myself in order to create the business and the lifestyle that I wanted. And so to be honest, this personal development work changed my life. I wouldn't be where I am without it. And that's ultimately what the course was created from, is I found this freedom, and Michael did too. We met, we both actually met through the Strong Coach in the same course, and it radically transformed our lives. And we're like, okay, we want to help people feel what we feel.
Yeah.
And so, you know, some of those things that I look back and think about is, you know, I'm big on language. So the words you use have a big impact, right? And so there, you know, for example, there's words, soft talk and solid talk. So soft talk are words like think, try, maybe, probably. So they leave uncertainty and they leave ambiguity. And then there's and they can leave doubt. And then there's words that are solid talk, like will, do, can.
Yeah.
So for example, I used to use a lot of soft talk. So I would say, oh, like, for example, in terms of my own life, I think I'm going to start my own online business.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to try and get some new clients, right?
Yeah.
And I found for me personally, that left doubt. And it's because I didn't believe I could do it. You know, so I use words like think and try, and instead of saying, I'm going to start an online business and having confidence with that.
Right.
And it also kind of gave me an out where if I did fail, I could just be like, oh, well, I just said I was going to try, you know? And so that's like just one of many things that we use in this course to help people realize that you have to believe at first before you can achieve a goal. And so, you know, one of those being, looking back, I honestly, you know, when I started my online business, having a CrossFit background, I looked at people like, you know, Comp Train with Ben Bergeron, or Training Think Tank, or CrossFit Invictus, OPEX with James Fitzgerald. And I looked at all these online programming resources, and I remember thinking to myself, like, how can I do that? I'm like, they have games athletes, they have, you know, all this stuff. I'm like, who, you know, and the biggest shift was just believing that I could do that.
Right.
And so, and it's wild because once I did, you know, and I started posting on social media and just, you know, having that confidence, all of a sudden random people were reaching out to me like, hey, I think I need to hire you as a coach. And I'm like, sure, let's do it.
Nice.
So that's a big thing. And then another part is like the goal setting that I went through. So the way that we start off goal setting is we have people write the statement of, I want blank because blank.
Okay.
And so the first blank is, what is the goal? And then the second is, why do you want the goal?
Yeah.
Right? What's your why? And it's funny because almost everyone we go through has no problem writing the goal down, but then when it comes to the because, they get stumped, or they write a because, but it's pretty surface level. And so even for me, I wrote down some initial goals of like, I want to own my own facility because of, you know, I can't even remember why, or I want to have like, you know, 20 coaches as part of Relevant Athletics and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I started to write the because, I kind of realized like, oh, I don't actually want these.
Yeah.
It's just like, I feel like I should because other people are doing it.
Right. That's a huge realization right there. That why is huge, man.
Yeah. And so it's the same thing. Like a great example I use a lot is I had a client that I was taking through this, and she said, I want to lose weight because I want to feel better. And I said, okay, cool. That's a good start. So then I part of my job is to get more specific and more accurate. So I asked her, okay, how do you feel now that you don't like the, like, what's the difference between how you feel and how you want to feel?
Right.
As she thought about it, she's like, well, maybe feel better is not the right word. Like, I feel okay. And this ended up being this like 30-minute deep dive. And then finally she said, well, I want to feel more confident. And I was like, aha,
there we go.
It's actually about confidence. So then I asked, I was like, well, can you be confident without losing weight? And she said, yeah, I guess so. And I was like, yeah, so that's not the best because statement. And the reason is we want to have confidence without having to lose weight, right? Now, if we lose weight, it's likely that we will feel more confidence, but confidence is not dependent upon 10 pounds lighter or 20 pounds lighter, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And so we the progression ended up being because I want to be strong and healthy, right? And then the confidence is like a whole other, you know, deep dive into story work and just believing that and taking on that identity. So really, the course is, right now it's a 6-week course, and we're in our beta program, sort of testing out what's working, what's not working well. And, you know, essentially where we start is week 1 is we look back. So we reflect on the past, and that's something that a lot of people don't do. So we look back 5 or 10 years, depending how old you are. And we think about, okay, where were you, you know, 5 years ago, right? It's 2020. So in 2015, where were you? What were you doing? What was your mindset like? How much money were you making? Who were your friends? Where were you living? Like all these things. And then the next exercise we do is called sacrifice and settling. So where in your life have you sacrificed? Where have you settled? And then from there, we write out your perfect day. So if everything in the world worked out, what would be your perfect day as in depth as possible? Where do you wake up? What time? Where are you living?
Gotcha.
What kind of coffee do you have? And so essentially that allows us to look back and reflect. And then the perfect day helps us create a vision for, okay, what do we want? And then from there, the following weeks go into goal setting and vision casting. And that really sets the stage because the other thing that a lot of people are getting caught up with, and we just launched this, the program last week was our week 1 call. So we do a weekly Zoom call with everyone in the class. And a common theme is people get so caught up in the how of reaching their goals.
Yeah.
And first, really, we need to figure out what do you actually want and why you want it, right? And people, they get too caught up in being safe, and they're too reasonable with their goals. They need to reach farther, right? Because it's, and so a lot of people are like, oh, well, you know, like we have one person who like loves baking and pastries, and like she's a marketing manager, and she started talking about that. And as she started talking about like her love for pastries ever since she was a kid, her eyes were just lighting up. Like she was so excited. And I was like, this is what you need to do.
Yeah. This
is very obvious. And yet what's holding her back is the idea of like, she makes good money and she has a security net and all, which is understandable, right? I'm not saying that we just throw that caution in. But at this stage, we don't need to worry about that. Let's just figure out what do you want, why do you want it, why that's important, and then we'll figure out the how later. And so I found that a lot of people, whether it's fitness goals, you know, losing weight, getting stronger, or life goals, you know, they let the how stop them before they even start.
Gotcha. Yeah. What I would find a lot of people that have like certain goals, it's people like are very conservative with it, are unsure like how they'll get there. But it's also, you know, I find that people have a hard time just starting things, you know, it's like any little action that you can take every day is a step towards that goal, which is another huge thing. It's just like starting is so hard for a lot of people. And I think I don't know, there's a lot of different reasons, like they're scared. Fear plays a factor, so many different things. So do you guys tackle kind of that aspect of it as well?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you say that because one of the big themes from the call last week is fear, and people are afraid.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's where, you know, we talk about language and we talk about emotions, and fear is an emotion the same way that excitement is an emotion.
Right.
And it just depends how you look on it, right? So a lot of the mindset work we get into is, you know, we talk about the growth mindset where, you know, you look at every opportunity in life as a potential to grow, right? So if you know, there's basically 2 types of people, the growth minded and the fixed mindset. And growth minded people, for example, let's say you get a bad grade on a test.
Yeah.
Well, that person says, okay, I'm never going to let this happen again. I'm going to study more. I'm going to stay after class. I'm going to ask more questions, you know, whatever it is. And the fixed mindset person says, oh, I'm not a smart person. I'm not good at tests, right? And just stay within that. And obviously all of us, you know, have more strengths and weaknesses than others, right? So we can't all be a professional NBA player,
right?
But we can get better tomorrow than we were today,
right?
And so that's why the mindset is so big. And yeah, we, you know, so the first part of the course is really like mindset, language, setting the stage, casting a vision, and then towards the end we talk into more implementation. Okay, so scheduling, time and energy cultivation. So how do you schedule your time? How can you set yourself up for success? And then, you know, it's a lot of tools that Michael and I have learned that have worked for ourselves of just tiny habits. So there are those people who start off with, you know, they're so afraid that they don't even start. You know, starting is the hardest part. They stop before they start. And then there's other people who bite off more than they can chew.
Right.
And I know a really popular book nowadays is Atomic Habits by James Clear, which I recently read. And he talks about this idea of tiny habits.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's what people don't realize is like over time, little by little, a little becomes a lot. And if you just focus on 1% improvement every day, you know, over the course of a year, you'll be far beyond where you think you are. And, you know, a great example of this that I've implemented in my life is I love reading, and I found that at the end of the day, too much happens. I can't focus, whatever. So I started, every morning with reading, and I started by just like 5 minutes a day, because I was like, that's almost too easy. But it's like, and my reward is I get to drink my coffee. I'm not allowed to drink my coffee until I read. And you know me, I love coffee.
Yeah.
And it slowly evolved into, now it's a habit. And then I went to 10 minutes a day. And then at one point I was reading 2 books, a chapter from each book every morning. And so that's kind of one of the things. And ultimately that's where coaching comes in, is like, this is now like more personal development, but it's what I love about helping people. And what I love about coaching that I feel is different than teaching is there's a mentorship aspect, and there's a guidance, and a lot of people need that accountability, and you need someone to help them, check in and give them ideas and give them feedback. And, so that's definitely a major part of the course.
Yeah. Let's talk about then you again. And I know you're helping, like, it's obviously you love to coach, and that's super awesome that you're helping these people. You're doing it through, the fitness aspect of it. You're doing it through mindset and goal setting. It's freaking awesome. And I can just, you can sense that you're really passionate about that. So, and let's hear about, what are your goals that you have for, like, let's say near future goals for you as an athlete and for you with your business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had a goal. Well, so I recently had a goal to compete at Wadapalooza as a CrossFit athlete, and I checked that off.
Nice.
And that was pretty cool, because the power of writing things down. I wrote it down almost a year ago, forgot about it, had some friends who needed somebody on a team, and they asked me to join, and then it happened, and checked that off. And I also have a goal of I think it's to snatch 250 pounds, clean and jerk 300 pounds, and run a 5K under 20 minutes, all within the same week. Although with this coronavirus, I don't know, my goals have shifted a little bit. I'm really just like getting outside more. So I'm not sure how that's going to change. I would say it's made my priorities shift. And, once things get more normal, I want to spend more time outside, snowboarding, rock climbing, like using my fitness rather than spending as much time in the gym.
Gotcha.
And then, as far as business goals, Summit Collective and this personal development work is really more where my passions are. I really love inspiring people, and essentially we want to help people like live the story that they've always dreamt of, and so while I do love programming, and like I coach a little bit at the CrossFit gym, and I love that in person, it's sort of like the CrossFit aspect of my business. I like doing a little bit of everything. So I have one-on-one clients that I like programming for, and then I like coaching in person. But long-term, I really like this work I'm doing with mindset and goal setting. And so ultimately it's growing the course. It's, I have a few clients who I do one-on-one coaching, where that's really what we focus on. Is it's, I don't really like the term life coaching. I feel like it has a weird connotation, but at the same time, people kind of see that. But it's really just mentoring and like using the tools that have helped me and help people, get out of survival and figure out what do they want, why do they want it, and really live the lives that they want. And ultimately, it's like within like the fitness and outdoor, realm, because that's what I love. And part of why we created this for those people is we believe like you're supposed to live life. Like the American dream is where like, oh, I just want to make enough money so when I retire, I can travel. And then we're broken and, don't really want to travel. And we want to help people do that now. And so even with CrossFit, people get hooked and are addicted. And then like, they don't live their lives. They don't go out with their friends because they got to work out in the morning. And then, they don't use their fitness. And so I just want to help facilitate that so people can like become the best versions of themselves. And for me, I believe that fitness is part of that, the same way mindset is, and sleep and nutrition, they're all interconnected.
Nice. That's awesome. That's such a huge impact that you're going to have there with people. And I'm excited to see that journey for you. So but let's let people know where they can find you and where they get more information about the things that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So Most active on Instagram. Taylor _ Sleaford is my Instagram handle. And then for fitness coaching, relevantathletics.com, and then also at Relevant Athletics on social media. And then if you want to learn more about the School of Life and Summit Collective, it's at Summit _ Collective on Instagram, Summit Collective on Facebook as well.
Awesome. Cool. So let's leave people with like one good tidbit of advice or any information that you have that can help them reach their goals.
Yeah.
Give it
awesome.
to us.
So I would say, as far as if you want to make a life change or you're not happy with where you are, one thing that's really helped me is this quote that I once heard, that is, in order to help someone, you only need to know more than they do. And I've definitely dealt with like the imposter syndrome of being a coach, of like, oh, I don't know that much about nutrition. And then I realized like, oh, for this person, I'm like an expert. So just realize like you don't have to know it all to get started. And then for these fitness goals, it's literally just about starting, just one day at a time.
Right on. Good stuff, man. I appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me, and everyone go follow Taylor. And if you have any questions about mindset, goal setting, training, he's the guy to go to. So thank you so much, Taylor. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Raechel. This was fun.